Welcome back to John's Films. Today we're talking about hardware. Today's hardware is the laptop I purchased a couple of months ago. This is a Dell G7 with a 4K OLED display. It has a 9750H and a 2080 Max-Q in it. The interesting thing about it is it was such a deal, $1,600. And that's because it came with only a 512 gigabyte hard drive. Now, I've got a fix for that. An upgrade. The upgrade option here is an M.2 drive. Question is, how do we upgrade this? Well, the first thing we do is we log into the machine and we back it up. We have the option of using the backup settings and backup utility here in Windows. For me though, I don't need to back up the entire operating system. In fact, all I really need to do is worry about a couple of key files that I've got created, and so that would be my Wi-Fi surveys. And, I'm going to deactivate my studio license for Davinci Resolve so that I don't have any problems when I try and reactivate it. The one thing that you need to make sure you do is activate your license for Windows with the Microsoft servers. So log in with a Microsoft account, and that will allow it to activate and kind of give you a digital entitlement to this machine for Windows. Before we get started, we need to do a checklist to make sure that we have everything we need. First would be a hard drive we're going to be replacing it with. The second is a hard drive with a Windows install disk put on it. So I've got a USB drive here, jumped over to Windows install tool, and used it to create an install copy of Windows. The last thing we need is just a screwdriver. And now we're able to get going at it. Here is the website you download Windows installation media from. You want this link halfway down the page called the installation media. Click download tool now. As you can see, it's a quick download. Double click to run and authorize it by clicking yes when you run it. Next, it's going to tell you I've got a few things to get ready. As it comes up, you will need to accept the software license for Windows. And next, it's going to ask you, do you want to install this on a USB drive or do you want to create an ISO file? We're interested in the USB drive. So one, make sure you've got a spare blank USB drive or thumbstick installed. Now, this is going to be one that's going to be formatted entirely. You're going to tell it to create installation media, and you're going to choose the architecture. Most of this will already be chosen for you and will match what you need. USB flash drive or ISO file, we're going USB flash drive. Notice that will format everything to do with this drive. Once you click your drive and click next, it will then save a copy of Windows 10 installation media to that drive. Now, any machine you would like to install Windows 10 on, just plug that drive in and reboot. Now that I've got everything backed up that I want backed up, I'm going to shut down this system, crank up, open up my tool set. If you haven't seen these before, this is the Manta, I believe it is, iFixit toolkit. I bought it on a whim and have absolutely loved it. Like, I might buy another one just to have another one for fun because this thing is amazing. It's got every bit you could ever want. Here, though, we only need to get into our standard Phillips head screwdrivers, albeit really small. If you've got a eyeglass fix-it kit or something, you can probably use those. So now I pop out all of the screws on the back of the G7. That's one. As I recall, one or two of these screws is a touch different, so pay attention to that too. And a trick you could use, much like I've got a grid right here, if you want to keep track of which one goes exactly where, position them in a sequence, in the same sequence that you take them off on your table. And that'll allow you to make sure that when you go back to put them back on, you can have the same orientation and you won't have any confusion if they are any different. Now, I've already upgraded the RAM in this system, and I'll point that out for those of you that want to upgrade your memory. This one had 16 gigabytes of RAM. I've upgraded mine to 32. Really, that's not going to help you too much unless you're working with large fusion textures, possibly very, very complex 4K timelines. But really, I think you won't see that unless you're using higher resolution footage as an editor. All right, so I took out 7 screws, and 2 seem to be in a screw retention clip here. So I'm going to see if I can now just get my fingernail somewhere under the edge of this thing. There we go. So I peeled up from the back because, oh yeah, there's some hooks on the front. So what you want to do is go to the back of the system, make sure that these two, which have captures on them, are empty, and then just pull up from the back and it'll come right open. So here we are on the inside of the laptop. Don't touch anything here you don't have to. I will tell you that the processor and the graphics card are under these two heat sinks. The heat sinks draw heat out with the heat pipes to the fans, and the fans use it to exhaust out the side of your system, both in the back and the side, it looks like. So being aware of that is really good, because now you know. Let's try not to plug up these holes with some fancy Apple stickers or something. Now, your storage is right here under this M.2 shield. Your RAM, your memory, is over here. If you wanted to upgrade your memory, you just peel up this flap and you can have full access to your memory. But today we're here for the hard drive. So I'm going to look at the hard drive and understand that there are two screws retaining it. One here and one here. I can pull these out, save that screw separate, save this screw separate. There we go. And now I'm going to pull out. Remember, I'm trying not to touch anything, so you can see me being very careful not to touch anything in the system that I don't need to. Back this out and pull this drive out. Now, something to notice, yeah, that's a tiny hard drive. So this is an SSD. It is not an NVMe drive. Now, notice I did lose a little screw in here. So right here. Lost that little screw when I pulled out the shield. There is Dell did something interesting here. There's a little slider here, this little item. This is a resizer. The M.2 drives that we've got can come in a number of lengths. 2280 millimeters is the most popular length, and that's what this one is, this Samsung. This one down here, I don't even know what length that is. That's the tiny, tiny length. So now you can see this hard drive is a little bit bigger. This one's an NVMe drive as well, so I'll get faster speeds while I'm at it. Just fantastic. I went with the 1 terabyte. This is not my daily driver. I am going to be using it quite a bit. I'm moving studios shortly, and I'll be without my workstation for a while. And so I want to make sure that I've got enough space to be able to edit my B-raw footage. Now, this drive, as you've noted, is bigger and longer. There's a retention mechanism that I need to change the spacer that's in here. You do that by pushing down and sliding out to the right if you're facing the back of the laptop here. Sliding away from the socket so that you get this little clip. And this little clip I'm now going to use to space out the retention mechanism for this. So the first thing I'm doing, I'm just going to test fit this and try and get an understanding of where I need the screw hole to be. It looks like it's going to be in the longest mechanism there is possible. So I'll put the hard drive away for a second. I'll rearrange the screw hole so that it's facing away, and I'll slide it under the retention mechanism on this side. Done. Now it's a matter of lining up your gap, just like we did a second ago. It's mostly going to be label facing up. If you want to use the same hard drive I'm using, it's a 970 Evo Plus. It is 1 terabyte. I think it was $150, which is a fantastic deal for a good NVMe hard drive. So you can check that out on Amazon. The link is below. The 2 terabyte one I think is $250, and if this were my daily driver, that's probably what I would do. Making sure I get the same retention screw that I had before, I'm now going to screw back in to that screw plate that I had that I adjusted so that it would fit the bigger drive. It's amazing to me how far hard drives have come if you consider the spinning disk drives that many of us are still using for bulk storage. You know, it's this big. This thing's crazy. I love that you don't have to plug any other cables into it as well. It really helps when you're building the primary PC to use these, because you no longer have to worry about all that business. I'm going to put the old hard drive in the existing case just to keep it safe. It's under the plastic there and it can't get hurt. I don't know what I'm going to use it for, but kind of save everything, because at some point somebody will call me with that drive broken and they'll need a replacement, and I can give it to them. Alright, so the next thing we do is get back to our heatsink. This heatsink helps transfer the heat off of this hard drive. The drive does get kind of hot. Now, it gets kind of hot when it's in quick bursts of speed and bursts of access. And that's really what NVMe drives are good for. Quick quick bursts, not necessarily prolonged file reads, though they're faster than your average drive at it. They're faster than an SSD. They're not as significantly faster as they are in their kind of speed benchmark test, in which they get really fast. This one can go up to about 3,000 megabytes a second. And now what I'm doing is screwing down this heatsink, making sure that I don't over tighten. That's a real tendency. People think they have to get this down. If you consider it, really just touching the drive is good enough. I'm going to tighten it down until I start to feel some resistance, and I'm good there. Now it's a matter of just buttoning this back up and making sure that I get all the screws back in where they belong. So I'll grab the plate, and you want to make sure, again, don't touch any of this. This is cooling. You want to get the vents to go over the blue stuff. That's a good way to remember it. I'm still facing the back of the PC here, the front up towards the camera. And so I take the front of the plate, and I'm going to put it in the front and slide it down, and then click down, making sure I get a seal on all corners before I start screwing. I don't need it bent all over the place. And I will start with these two screws which were held captive here in the back. Now, if I don't have the install disk plugged in, it's going to boot up to the Dell boot menu and then try and run that test again. I hit escape to skip it. And now there's nothing to boot to. You see, there's no hard drive installed. Like, it's physically there, but there's nothing stored on it. So when the computer tries to boot to it, nothing happens. I will hijack that by installing a USB drive. Plug that in, and this is what's going to allow me to install Windows. If it does not jump into this, you need to use your BIOS settings to be able to configure the USB drive as a bootable disk ahead of any installed hard drive. And as a result, I'll now get a Windows logo and a Windows install. Having booted to the Windows disk, you can see I have the Windows install. Follow through your Windows install, primarily clicking Next, and click Install Now. It will copy the contents of the base Windows operating system over onto the laptop hard drive. From here, I'll be able to configure it as a brand new Windows machine. If you have saved a backup of Windows, you'll be installing the base system and then restoring from the backup. As I said before, I don't have any real need for that. I'd like to wipe this clean and get a brand new system out of it. It's going to ask you if you want to upgrade your system or install a new one. Obviously, we're installing brand new. So you'll choose that, and now I'm back to waiting on Windows. Grab some coffee. Now, frankly, this took very little time compared to what it used to take to install Windows. So the computer's now restarting, and when it comes back up, I'm going to make sure I unplug the installation media. So it's down, so I unplug, and now when it comes back up, I'll have a fresh copy of Windows installed. You may notice a spinning logo at the bottom. That is it booting into Windows, so you know that something good has happened because you've got Windows installed, and now it's getting ready to boot. So don't worry if this takes a while. It is setting up Windows and doing its thing. Most importantly, though, we unplugged the install drive. To recap for you, here's what we've done. We backed up our system. We unscrewed the back plate on the computer. We took the heatsink off of the M.2 drive. We unplugged it. We moved the spacer so that it would fit the longer M.2 drive. We put the heatsink back on after we installed the drive, and then we put the back plate on. Using our previously formatted Windows external drive, we plugged it in and booted. About 4 clicks later, we had Windows installed, and now we're in our first boot. Here it's going to ask me a few questions about my location, whether or not I want to use their tracking services, whether or not I want to enable Cortana so that she's helpfully listening to everything that happens in my house, or if I'd like to turn it all off.
I'm Cortana, and I'm here to help.
Here's my girl.
A little sign in here, a touch of Wi-Fi there, and we'll have your PC ready for all you plan to do. Use your voice or the keyboard along the way, and if you'd like me to stay quiet, just select the little microphone icon towards the bottom of your screen.
Don't tell her I did that. And now I'm going to choose my region, my keyboard layout, installing a physical network cable from my switch so that I'll have really fast access to the internet. Now let's see what's new from Windows. Here I gave them all the credit for the fast install with the USB drive, but I guess you got to pay for the pain somewhere. All right, now I can add my account. I am using my Microsoft account, and I'm doing that because it handles my entitlement. That is the license for this computer to have Windows on it. I don't want to have to pay another one, right? So here we are. Here I'm choosing privacy settings. I don't need my speech recognition. I do like Find My Device. I know that that is a tracker against me, but if somebody were to steal this, since it's a laptop, I would like this to know where it is so that if somebody boots it up, I'll be able to track it and maybe, potentially get it back. I don't know. We'll see. I do use OneDrive as a backup, so I'll check that. No, Cortana. What is that, twice they've asked me about Cortana now? And we're rebooting. Boom, Windows. Now you notice my desktop is already personalized, and it's personalized because, good news, I used my Microsoft account and it's downloaded my profile. Further, if I go into my settings, I'll see that this has already entitled the computer and the license to me. So I've got a brand new machine with a terabyte worth of storage, and I am ready to rock and roll. Thanks for watching. As always, if this has been really helpful to you, please feel free to buy me a coffee. The link is below. Otherwise, if you need the link to the hard drive or to the toolkit, those links are below as well. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.